Let's start off by saying, so last year when, at the conclusion of the previous, there we go, come on. At the previous convention, David came up to me and started asking me about what I thought of the white truck, started talking about what I thought about Gilbert Erector and things of that nature. Well, I guess I showed a lot of passion and enthusiasm for what I thought about the history of A.C. Gilbert, the Erector set, and things of that nature. And then he sprung on me, well, hey, would you like to actually do the presentation at next year's convention? And of course, he got me all riled up, and I said, of course, yes. And so I don't know how well I'll do tonight, but I'll make up with enthusiasm. So I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for David for inviting me to take on tonight. So with that, let's go ahead and kick off our journey here. As you see my title slide here, hopefully everybody can see this here. We've kind of turned down the lights. We're going to talk about the history of the white truck, specifically the history of the Gilbert Erector white truck. But I wanted to actually take a look at from some different angles. And so you notice the title I have here is a perspective look. And so as we continue on, you'll get to see what I mean by that. So every journey has a beginning, middle, and end. And to that point, Beth and I have been very fortunate over the years that we've been members of the ACGHS going back over 30 years. We've tried to turn each one of these conventions into a adventure in and of itself. And those trips, along with other trips that we've been on, we've been fortunate enough that we've been to all the 50 states, 3 continents. We have make sure we've got many national parks, almost too many to count, 3 continents, and definitely too many nights on a Holiday Inn Express. But with that note, Beth and I kind of work well together as far as I'm kind of a big picture guy. We kind of plot out a course, like coming to the convention was kind of like the end game. Well, what are we going to do along the way? How far do I want to drive during the day? That's a big point of it. So 300 miles, 400 miles. Okay, we're going to stay here. And then Beth comes in and works the detail. So I want to say, take this opportunity to say thank you to Beth and all for her support all the years and making my passion and love of A.C. Gilbert Company and the toys that he created a reality. And so with that, let's take a look at the topics I have here. You'll see that I'm keeping to the central theme of the white truck, the Erector white truck. But I also want to let you see up here, there's kind of a historical perspective, a context on why Gilbert might have included it. So I hope you all enjoy it. Wow. So, got to have an obligatory reference slide here. But it's more than that. We are very blessed in our club to have several individuals that over the last 30 plus years, actually even before the club was created, we have so many individuals that have dedicated themselves to doing research, to publishing articles, to actually writing books. And we are so very fortunate that those individuals have actually come together to put that down in writing for us. Now, why did they do all that? I really believe that it goes to the name of our club. We are the A.C. Gilbert Heritage Society. We are not just the Erector Collecting Club. We come together because while we too truly love the toys, we actually come together because we try to maintain a legacy. We have feelings that run much deeper than just collecting toys and selling toys and things of that nature. We really do believe that we have a appreciation for a man who created a company that this company actually created individuals that put man on the moon, harnessed the laser, and ultimately put a computer in everybody's household or everybody's wallet or pocket, I should say. And so we have a true appreciation for the legacy of A.C. Gilbert. And so as part of what these individuals have done over the years, as far as documenting and creating resources, I think it goes much deeper than just collecting toys. Now, in my research for this presentation and how I wanted to approach this. There are many things at our disposal, and I will tell you that here's a few that I have up here. Some of the books here, of course, you got Gilbert's autobiography, but you also have books by Bill Bain, Bruce Harrison, and there's so many more up there. I referenced GTP and Gemini and Copilot. Those are also great resources there. But I do want to acknowledge two individuals specifically. Unfortunately, they're not here with us tonight. Bill Bain. In researching this and actually coming up with how I wanted to steer this discussion, I definitely have a new appreciation for what Bill did 40 years ago. I was talking with someone today, and he actually was writing articles in the TCA newsletter back in the 80s. And that ultimately led to him the creation of the Greenberg books. And this was all before the age of the internet. So I think we owe Bill, and we've said it before, we republished his books, a truly debt gratitude for actually documenting what we know and we love. And then the other individual I also want to recognize is Bruce Hansen. Bruce, over the years, I've had many conversations with Bruce. He is extremely knowledgeable. You've seen what he has done as far as the articles, the newsletter, set layouts that he's put together. He's also done several books that they're on our website to use. I can always call up Bruce and actually have a great conversation about some detail that I'm missing here. He's actually one of the individuals that loves to get into the nitnoid from year to year. And I know many of y'all have talked with me about today about different things in the white truck as far as components. We'll get to that. So I do not claim to be an expert in any of this. I try to assemble my knowledge together for y'all tonight. If I say anything that you think is incorrect, please correct me. I will tell you that I want to learn more. Y'all want to learn more. And so let's kind of kick this off and continue on. Now, I know many of you out in the audience are going to be truly disappointed. Truly disappointed here. Unfortunately, though, I decided early on that this presentation is not going to be about the different nuances of white truck parts. It is definitely something that can be looked at. In fact, if you came by my table today, I had several different variations of the white truck parts there, and I have a little booklet that I'm working on right now based upon resources and actually putting together in a straightforward manner as far as what changes took place with the white truck parts. However, though, that is not what tonight is going to be about. I do think that knowledge is captured in the previous resources that I talked about. But hold on, let's wait. What about the parts? What about all these changes? I do want to talk about that from a perspective standpoint, from a context standpoint. Why did we go from paint to plating? Why did we go from the DPs? You see those beautiful 26 DPs, so then we went to the some more simpler ones. The fenders. We've also created from the radiator. We simplified it. Oh, what about the knuckles? Oh, the knuckles. Everybody talks about the knuckles. So, one reason, and this is also going to be a theme of tonight. Asa Gilbert Company was about one thing. Yes, its core was educational toys for boys and girls, but its core, it was a business, and it had to make money. And so as we take a look at parts, not just for tonight, I think it's important to recognize that as the company went through what it needed to do, it looked at it from a business perspective. And so with that, I want to bring up something here that I've obtained recently. This is actually a Gilbert News from 1955. Oh, wow. And back in the back here, there's and I apologize, I just got this, and so therefore it's not in the presentation, but it's worthwhile mentioning that there's a section here on cost conquering campaign. And it's about everything that they looked at as far as what they wanted to conquer. And this is a quarterly newsletter for the company. And if you'll see there, it actually shows the Erector white flag, the change there. And so I want to read what it says here because I think it's important to recognize why these parts did change. I need to get some light here, so I'm going to kind of do it like this so I can actually read it. All righty. In the past, the Erector flag was cut out and stapled together. A person recommending that the flag be put into the set as a makeup item saves the company $3,500 a year. That's over $40,000 a year in today's money.
Wow.
And so when we take a look at the different nuances of parts changing, I think it's also worthwhile to note that these parts changed because this was a business. And sometimes businesses need to make money, and there's always cost-cutting areas there. And so I thought that was very timely and interesting about the Erector flag. All right, so moving on. Oh, mentioned Beth earlier. I can tell you that she's the credit for this slide. She said, I'm not going to come to this show if you start talking about the differences in parts. All righty, just the facts. Okay. Just the facts. I love Joe Friday, Sergeant Joe Friday on Dragnet. Just the facts, man. Very straightforward, to the point. Well, let's get to the point. What is the history of the white truck? It was in 1923, Burdick Murray, who was in Cleveland, Ohio, partnered with or licensed from the White Motor Company, the White Truck line. They came up with a press steel toy called their white truck that lasted for about less than 18 months.
Yeah.
The Gilbert Corporation, who was also owned by, Gilbert Corporation was owned by A.C. Gilbert, purchased the rights, the tools, the dies from the Burdick Murray Company in 1925. 1926, A.C. Gilbert included those parts into his 1926 7.5 Erector set. That's the history.
Yay.
The end. I'm done.
Yay.
But wait, there's more. There's a lot more to the history and why, and that's what I want to get into tonight. All right. Get my little pointer here. So this is a shameless plug for my collection. But I want to represent it here because it does highlight how my approach and what my love is for the topic that we have here tonight. History of me, real fast in a nutshell. 35 years ago, Beth and I were at a flea market in Nashville, Tennessee. I stumbled upon, at the time I didn't know this, but it was an 8.5 red metal box Erector set. It was rusty, bad shape, but it was something that I'd never seen before. It had girders. For me personally, I got a Gabriel Erector set in the early 70s. That's what my dad gave me. It was the Type 3 error parts. And here is a set that says Erector, like my set said Erector, but it had very different items in there. I found it intriguing. I immediately bought it. Beth and I got married over the next few months. We went through Mississippi, Tennessee, and Arkansas visiting family and friends so I could show her off. And along the way, I think I bought around 10 sets. So you can say that 35 years ago, I got stung and the bug was set. So let's talk about my collection. But I want to focus on this line right here. And I don't know sure if you can really tell it or not. But when you take a look and you line up the Erector sets, this over here, this side over here being 1913 all the way over into the late 60s, you can actually see the 5 decades there go by in the history of America in the first half of the 20th century. So you look at the sets from the teens, very the brown boxes, the black paper cardboard boxes, very structural, very the Type 1 sets as we call them, just very structural, industrial things of that nature. As you go into the 20s, well, that's the roaring 20s. They turn into the red wooden boxes. The cardboard boxes become very flashy. This is where all the what's called the classic models come out there, the white truck, but you also have the Zeppelin and all the other, the locomotive, the airplane, all these other fantastic models come out in the roaring 20s. Well, then you get over a little bit further, you actually delve into, now we're into the 30s, the Great Depression. No more big wooden boxes. Actually, the sets get smaller. The parts count gets smaller. The sets get smaller, but they actually get flashier. I love the sets from the 30s, the red boxes, the green boxes, the blue boxes, how they actually, when you open up to them, you got the parts in the lid, very flashy, but it actually represents the time because it's a smaller thing, staying in business, but we're trying to go through the Depression. 40s. Big event in the 40s, World War II. That decade, we have a wooden Erector set. That's cool. I mean, I love highlighting that to friends that come over. In the 50s, Well, again, we start with the 50s with we kick it off with another war, and the Korean War, and what do we have? We have those aluminum parts that we all love.
Yeah.
But the 50s actually turned into a fantastic decade with robots and with the amusement park set and all those wonderful sets of the 50s. And then we roll over into the 60s, you end up with the space age sets and things of that nature, the models for space and stuff like that. And so I like to highlight, when I share my collection, I like to highlight that you can actually see America in the toys that Gilbert produced. Yeah. And so let's try to take that a step further. And what I want to do is tell the story of the white truck from the perspective of history that led to it and actually surrounded it. It provides context, a perspective, it provides meaning. It was more than just a toy. It represents a specific time in American history that the truck was the latest and greatest technology that boys will want to build and play with. Wow. And that's the approach I want to take tonight. Okay. So let's talk about the history. What history did A.C. Gilbert grow up in that led to him when he started his business? A.C. Gilbert was born February 15, 1884. I hope I got that right. In Salem, Oregon. His adolescence, he excelled as an athlete. He was never still, always looking for what's next. He was relentless in training and also showmanship. Reading through The Man Who Lived in Paradise, you can see a young man that was full of life and adventure. While his dad managed the family, A.C. Gilbert basically was able to live a carefree adolescence life. As Gilbert was becoming a young man and preparing for education to be a productive member of society, remember he won a gold medal? Well, guess what happened that same decade that he won a gold medal? Man flew. Orville and Wilbur flew at Kitty Hawk just a few years before that. This is the first 30 years of Gilbert's life, and so first 20 years. So I think it's very significant there. So let's actually talk about some details of that history. February 15th, 1898. Gilbert was 14 years old. What happened then? The USS Maine was sunk off of Cuba there. That thrust America into the Spanish-American War with Spain. Before he turned 15, that war was over, but very soon after that, Gilbert got to start reading about Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders. Also think about this. Just a couple of years after that, he got to experience going from the 19th century to the 20th century. For me, just 26 years ago, crossing over the mark from the 20th century to the 21st century, that made a pretty big impact on me because the past century was behind us. We're going to this new century. Everything is possible. And as we see, it was definitely that way for A.C. Gilbert. 1901, the Pan American Exposition. America wanted to show off, share, excel, share its ingenuity, its inventiveness, and they had the Pan American Exposition. It was a World's Fair, celebrated America, and going into the 20th century. Lots of things are written about this celebration, but one of my heroes, I'm an electrical engineer, one of my heroes is Thomas Edison. And Thomas Edison actually did the lighting for this World's Fair. And I want to make sure I say this exactly correct. In an article that I read about this, it said Thomas Edison achieved an unprecedented electrical illumination. Night did not exist with all of his lights. And so think about that. The first, when A.C. Gilbert was born, just a few, 26 years earlier, 14 years earlier, 16 years earlier, the lights were not commonplace. Wow. And here, just less than 20 years later, you have the Pan American Exposition and you have all of the lights being demonstrated there. So just the age of inventiveness and what's next. So Theodore Roosevelt, he's the president during this decade, during 1901 to 1909. Theodore Roosevelt actually is said to usher in the progressive era. And this is very important to the business of A.C. Gilbert. Leading up to this, McKinley and his work actually started establishing the middle class with what Theodore Roosevelt did as far as his effort to, make sure I get this word right, regulate business, he was able to solidify the middle class. And so when he had solidified the middle class, that actually helped business going into 1910, that you actually have a workforce that can go into manufacturing, and you also have individuals that have discretionary income. So let's talk about some household incomes. Between $500 and $1,600 a year by 1910. Expenses were up to $800, and a new house could be $2,000. So basically, if you're over here on this end of the spectrum, you were really just surviving. But by the solidification of the middle class, you were starting to move into actually having some discretionary funds, and we'll see that in the next decade. So, Taft becomes president. There's some things that happened there. Taft was actually a wrestler at Yale. Interesting fact there. But what is the most significant fact of the teens? World War I. World War I was extremely significant as far as taking the business culture that was in America and actually bringing it to a global market. The manufacturing robustness of America actually grew as a result of World War I. It made it a world power on the manufacturing scene. World War I pushed America's manufacturing to grow, business to grow. When we know about what Gilbert did with his toy line and how it grew. The Man Who Saved Christmas, he said we still have to make toys, but they participated in the war effort also. So World War I was extremely significant in business. Fun factoid, at the end of World War I, the spoils of war. What's most noted for the Gilbert had from the spoils of war? Anchor blocks. And so that was actually Erector anchor blocks from Germany, and now we have Gilbert anchor blocks. Now, one of the things that happened during World War I was, and we're going to get to the White Motor Company here in a minute, but one of the things that needed in World War I in Europe was ways to move troops and equipment efficiently. And so the manufacturing robustness in America also pushed the transportation side of it, trucks. So a little bit of foresight in there. Okay, let's get up to some facts here. Income, $1,300 to $1,500, so definitely growing the income in America during that decade. Expenses also grew up to $1,000, and a new house, $3,000. So as Gilbert actually enters the 20s, you can see kind of where America is as far as it's gone through World War I. It's the manufacturing robustness of America has really established itself. You have a workforce there that is ready to go. You also have discretionary income that is also there. So now we enter the Roaring 20s. We all know about the Roaring 20s, at least we've heard about them. I really like this. Basically, after the Great War, America became an alcohol-free party. Business boomed, and also expenses and spending. And so therefore, America was basically a free-for-all during this decade. Everything was possible during this decade. The music, the outfits, everything was about living large, growth and expansion. And so when we take a look at 1926, in the middle of that decade there, when we got about the white truck, this is exactly the environment that Gilbert was growing and making those beautiful sets in the 20s that we like to see. Last comment on the expenses and income. Income went up $1,500 to $2,000. So income is really growing during the 20s. Expenses up to $1,500 also growing. A new house could be $4,500. Now on that topic of a new house, in doing my research, I really thought this was kind of cool. We probably all heard of the Sears and Roebuck houses. I found a couple here. This one's around, $965. This one's around $4,300. They're in Huntsville and the Five Points area. You can drive around and you can see several examples of the Sears houses. This also is an example of how America was transforming. You could order through a catalog, you could order a house and have it built. Pretty amazing there. So the 20s were pretty cool. Now let's take a look back. Kind of get to the 20 there. Get to the 20s here. Let's talk about the inventions. Again, we're looking at what led to the mindset of the 20s and led to us where we are for white truck. Look at these inventions of the first 40 years of Gilbert's life. You got the motorcycle, you got the car, you got the cash register, radio, I like this right here. The zipper was invented during this time too. Coca-Cola, roller coasters. Hey, who here has a Gilbert vacuum cleaner? One or two of them. Okay. We have vacuum cleaners. Of course, you got Kitty Hawk and the airplane. Of course, that's something else. Think about this. 1903 was Kitty Hawk. Within, 12 years, we had dogfights over Europe with airplanes. That's how fast the technology progressed on airplanes. We have Edison invented the theory or found the theory of relativity. You have the main battle tank, gas mask, a helicopter. This was news to me. The helicopter was actually invented in that same era also after the airplane, but it actually didn't come into being until about 50 years later. Wow. Two fun facts here. Fortune cookies were invented and lifesavers. So a lot of explosion as a result of the Industrial Revolution and this leading up to the 20s with the white truck. Now, a couple of pages here on some fun facts I found. I mentioned earlier the man who saved Christmas. We all know about how Gilbert was the first president of the Toy Manufacturing Association. Well, and he went up to Congress and said we still have to make toys to compete with what's going on in Europe. Well, that didn't go away. I did not know about this. I actually read about it in the Man Who Lived in Paradise autobiography. But I also read about this, the Tariff Act of 1922. Who here knew about that? No, I didn't either. But undoubtedly, after World War I, the world, not just America, but the world entered a mini depression because there was the engine that drove the war machine over in the entire world suddenly did not have that fuel anymore. And it had to slowly change to go to more commercial endeavors. And one of those endeavors for Europe was toys. And this is where America, this is the reason Gilbert really set up the American Toy Association as a fledgling thing. Well, come back in 1920, 22, Europe is trying to infiltrate America again with, I won't say cheap toys, but definitely inexpensive toys. And so tariffs have been the topic of conversation over the last year. Well, this Tariff Act right here actually levied up to 40%. I think in one article I read it was up to 75% on certain toys that came back in America to protect America's toy market. Again, going back to the environment that the AC Global Company lived in during that first couple of decades. So I found this very interesting. Also, what are we celebrating this year? The 250th anniversary. Well, 100 years ago, they were celebrating the 105th. Think about that, 150th. Where we had a big celebration up in D.C., where we had the 50 states and other lands, what are they called? Territories around the mall up there. We had in Philadelphia 100 years ago, they had a similar type event going on to celebrate America's 150th. And big celebration in Philadelphia, went on for several months there. So America in 1926 was also celebrating itself. All right. Let's start bringing it back home. What are we here to talk about tonight? White truck. So this is actually out of the catalog for 1926. That's the later version there. I find this very interesting here. $15 in 1926 for a 7.5 Erector set. That was $284 today. That's pretty expensive, but that's also provides some context. The Buddy L press toy and the Kelmet press toy, the trucks that were out there at the time, they sold between these different press steel toys with Kelmet were up to $10. Buddy L, some of the more exotic ones were over $20, but again, same in that $10 to $12 mark for a pressed steel truck. And so I find this very interesting that when you take a look at the contemporary pressed steel trucks were around $12. Gilbert introduces a set to build a truck, and it's a few dollars more. My theory behind that, this presentation has a lot of speculation in here. My speculation on that is that Gilbert, it was about marketing. This was not just another pressed steel truck. This was a truck that enabled a young man or young woman to build all of these different versions, not just buy one truck and play with it. He had several he could build. And I think that is why Gilbert put the price tag just a little bit higher. So again, my speculation. Yeah. All right, the White Motor Company. Thomas White in 1876 established the White sewing machine company. By the turn of the century, by 1900, his sons have actually started venturing into the era of steam cars. I was unaware. I'm not an automobile guy. I love Mustangs. I love the look of Mustangs. I enjoy a race every now and then. But the history of automobiles were definitely lost on me, because in the first decade of the 20th century, gasoline-powered vehicles were not the norm. It was actually steam-powered. Yeah. The White Motor Company actually led the way. Very interesting enough, they had something called the Whistling Billy, and it actually set a world record, 74 miles per hour. I mean, that was kind of blew me away, that the first decade really focused on steam power and not gas power. So, but that did not last very long. A couple also little factoids here. In 1907, you have Teddy Roosevelt, while he was president. He actually had a white motor, it was called a white steamer at the White House. And then when Taft came in 1911, he actually had a white Model M as his personal favorite there. So you have two presidents there that actually used white steam cars in the White House as far as part of the transportation. Well, as you go into the teens, White Motor Company actually adapted to the change in times. By 1915, steam was going away and gasoline-powered engines were becoming the norm. But more importantly than that, you have World War I actually coming on the feet of where they were. These gasoline-powered vehicles is what World War I needed to be able to transport troops, equipment, and things of that nature. I was blown away by this number. One source that I read said that White supplied approximately 18,000 trucks into Europe. These trucks were very distinctive. That grill right there, these trucks were very distinctive. They had a certain look to them, same things that you see. I actually have somewhere up here, that green manual right there, that's actually a White Motor Company catalog from 1919. These trucks were very distinctive, and while there had other competitors around the country, White actually distinguished itself as far as being a very rugged truck that could go over difficult terrain and carry a lot of weight. I think that's one reason it was looked at by the Burdick Murray Company to actually say, this is a good company to partner with. Location also has a big deal. They were both located in Cleveland, Ohio. Now let's talk about it rocks. Gilbert Corporation. Gilbert Corporation was started in 1920 by A.C. Gilbert. There's a great story. I'm not going to go into it, but open up your Bill Bean book and actually read the story that was in TCA about how Gilbert got its name. So go back and look that up. So in 1920, Gilbert started the Gilbert Corporation. Gilbert Corporation was basically an avenue that Gilbert could use it as an entity to put out things that might be questionable, that may or may not be something that he wanted to be in the Gilbert line of toys, and he could try things. Steel Engineering was one of those Erector set type construction toys that was put out through Gilbert. Gilbert, after they acquired the white truck, that's when things actually exploded in goodness for the Gilbert Corporation. And over the next decade, they came out with all sorts of white truck models. By 26, the Gilbert Corporation also purchased the True Model company. We all love our True Model tip buckets, our True Model clamshells, things of that nature that were in our Erector sets. Well, they were first in Gilbert. Again, basically Gilbert used Gilbert to purchase things and then move them into his Erector line. And I think that's also a very important thing to note. All right. Like I said, go back to Bean's book of the volume 1 and look up the story of how Gilbert got its name. Okay. Educated speculation. So, again, Gilbert Company, I go back to this earlier comment. It was a company. It was in business to be business. It was in business to make money. And they wanted to make sure that whatever toy they produced, yes, educational was a core requirement, but whatever toy they produced, they wanted to be desired by children, by kids, by boys and girls to be able to have. And that was one of the main thrusts, when you take a look at this, of why the Gilbert company wanted to introduce what we call the classic models, and of course the white truck, into their line. So these toys that we see up here, today the airplane seems very commonplace. A truck seems very commonplace. This seems ancient. Ships, kind of ancient now. Steam shovels, not really used. Zeppelins are ancient. However, though, in that day, we just kind of went through all the inventions as far as what that day was about. Within the last 10 years, think about what SpaceX has done with their vertical launch, vertically landing spacecraft. Incredible, incredible. I will tell you that when I saw SpaceX launch and then come back and land vertically, I was blown away. Just a few years after that, I was in a meeting at work. They stopped, we didn't know what was going on. They stopped the briefing. They turned on whatever news station it was, and we got to see them land 2 vertical space vehicles side by side. Just incredible. So I can only imagine that the feeling that I felt by actually seeing this, you put yourself in that same position in the early 20s, and you see an airplane go, or a Zeppelin, or even a locomotive, a steam locomotive. Yes, by this time they've been around for 100 years, but the power of the locomotives that in the 20s were night and day between what was just 100 years ago and just what was just 20 years before that. And so for Gilbert to actually introduce these models into his line in the 20s there, this was all about the cutting edge of technology. And the white truck was definitely a cutting edge of power technology. Okay. So, why the white truck? I like this. It's a good business deal between Gilbert and Burdick Murray. Actually, though, it was a way to mimic the adult world. All the toys that we just talked about, it's a way to mimic the adult world. So, as we have discussed, the white truck actually represents power. There were several other companies that were producing vehicles for moving equipment and things of that nature. But white truck, during this time, White Motor Company during this time, had actually established itself as a vehicle that was powerful, that could transport heavy equipment over rugged terrain. Just curious, if I say deuce and a half by a show of hands, does that mean anything to anybody? There you go. What does deuce and a half mean? 2.5 tons. 2.5 tons is what it can carry, or 5,000 pounds, over rough, difficult terrain. Not highway terrain, rough, difficult terrain. And when you look at the white catalog there, White Motor Company catalog, you'll see that's what they talk about. They talk about how this vehicle was all about being able to transport equipment over rugged terrain. And let's face it, in the teens and 20s, most of America was not paved. And so white trucks is actually what helped the expansion of America on these roads that were very rough and rugged. So it's not as spectacular as an airplane. However, though, in my mind, this actually was very logical for Gilbert to include this in his line. This allowed children to play with something that was strong, cutting edge, powerful, and they had it in their hand. And so I believe that is why Gilbert had this toy in his line. Okay, coming to an end now. In conclusion, another quote that I read that I thought was interesting. The A.C. Gilbert white truck was not a unique invention, but a strategic acquisition. I thought that was kind of funny. I did a lot of different searches for, like I said, on AI, Google searches and things of that nature. And this was kind of put together by somebody, or maybe the computer generated it. But to me, it was so much more than just a strategic acquisition through the Gilbert Corporation. AC Gilbert included the white truck, I believe, because it was more than just a toy. It was a product for a specific economic and cultural period. It serves as a microcosm of the early 20th century and the history of industry, 20th century American industry. So for me, that is the enduring legacy of the white truck. That is why Gilbert included in his line, and that is why we celebrate today on its 100th anniversary. And it's enduring legacy that we have here. So, I appreciate your time today. Thank you for allowing me to share my love of history, and a couple of pictures here where Beth and I just were this year. But we have our 250, but we also have our white truck here. So thank you for your time tonight, and really appreciate David inviting me to be able to share my love of history and the AC Gilbert Company and its toys. Thank you.